Glad you're here at GatsbyConf. My name is Sam Bhagwat. I'm the co-founder of Gatsby, and my title is called The Anatomy of a Performance Audit. We're going to be walking through 3 points: what fast means, what fast is, how you stay fast, and then how you get fast. But first, why does performance matter? Performance matters because of user experience. People love fast sites. Performance matters because of conversion rates. The faster a site is, the more people convert to purchase. And it matters because of search rankings. Starting in May, Google is going to be ranking sites higher that have fast performance. Here's the problem. Making a slow website fast is hard. It's kind of like getting healthy, right? Like health, speed is a simple concept, but it's hard because everything you do impacts it. Like health, there's tons of information available on the internet, but as a non-expert, it can be hard to tell what actually will make an impact. And like health, once your site gets fast, you need to stay fast. So performance isn't just improvement, it's also a process. Improvements without a process are like Sisyphus pushing a ball up the hill. And like Sisyphus, it can feel quite frustrating to make a ton of improvements and then notice maybe 2 or 3 months later that your performance has regressed back to where it was. Okay, so we're going to talk about a couple things before we kind of go on. So first, this talk is pretty high level. However, we have shipped an accompanying piece of documentation in the performance section of our Gatsby docs. So if you find yourself wanting to go more into detail on a specific point, just feel free to go there. Second, the things that we're going to be sharing are things that we've learned over the course of dozens of performance audits and hundreds of conversations with people about performance, and specific to Gatsby sites, because there are subtle differences of things that you need to do when you're using Gatsby site versus other sites. Gatsby's already optimized certain points, and so there are going to be perhaps subtly different things you need to evaluate and focus in on. So we'll be covering what that is, though. So what is fast? Well, fast is measured by core web vitals, which are defined by Google. Largest contentful paint, which measures the load speed of your page. First input delay, which measures interactivity. And cumulative layout shift, which measures how much your page bounces around when it's loading. Okay, great. So how do we stay fast? What is a performance process that we can put into place? Luckily, it's not as hard as you might think. First, we just need to choose a primary testing tool. Lighthouse is a great tool that Google has put out. Web page test is another great tool. Then we need to be able to tell the impact that every piece of code we ship has on performance. We do that by implementing per commit, per pull request, performance monitoring in our CI. You can do that with Gatsby Cloud. You can also do that with a number of other great third-party services. Once we've quantified each change, we just need to watch the numbers and notice what's making our site faster, what's making it slower. Once we've got a process in place, we need to figure out how do we make a site that might have become slow faster, and we need to implement performance improvements. So first is a quote from Kyle, which you can see, and I think it cuts to the point of there are a lot of things you can do to make your site slow, and making it fast is about detecting them and remedying them. And then all performance work fundamentally is about telling your user's browser how to do less work. So what are the types of work that the browser does? Well, there's a lot, but we'll focus on 5 that are especially relevant. So fetch and parse third-party scripts. The browser fetches and parses your main JavaScript bundle for a page. It fetches, loads, and paints images and media. It loads CSS and fonts, and it paints the screen. And it makes calls over the network to do all these things. And so when you're optimizing performance, there's 5 corresponding types of improvements you can make. What we found is that the first 3 tend to be the most impactful for Gatsby sites, though it will depend on the particular details of your site. There's also a process by which you can do each of these. Let's talk about that process. For each type of browser work, you need to triage the impact it's causing, isolate key lines of code that are causing that, refactor or remove that code when it's clear-cut, or if it's not clear-cut, just estimate and evaluate whether it's worth your time to tackle that problem. The first one, third-party script impact. We're going to run a Lighthouse report. We're looking at 3 specific line items: reducing the impact of third-party code, minimizing main thread work, and reducing JavaScript execution time. If these are red or high up on the list, you can focus in on third-party scripts. And again, this is usually a challenge, so it's not a bad thing to do. If you're working on a professional site with, for example, marketing analytics. So understanding the script impact, try removing each script and testing before and after. Try removing all scripts and testing before and after. This will help you get a sense for how big the potential savings are. Understand the whys. Talk to your business users. Understand for each script, what are the purposes of this? How relatively important is it? Who uses the data? Reduce the script impact. You may find high cost and low value scripts that you can just get rid of, or unused scripts, even better, and optimize everything else. Lazy load, inline, so on. Again, more details in the docs. Great, we've triaged, we've isolated, we've refactored, we've evaluated our third-party scripts. Let's move on now to the second type of work, which is JavaScript bundle size. Every time Gatsby loads a page, it will load a JavaScript bundle associated with that page. And the smaller that bundle is, the faster your page will load. So here's, again, our Lighthouse report. We're going to zoom in on main thread work and reducing JavaScript execution time. If these are red or even yellow, zoom in. Profile, so the first step you need to do is to profile your code. You can install the Gatsby plugin Webpack Bundle Analyzer v2. That's a bit of a mouthful. And using that, that's a tool that helps us understand sort of how all these bundles are composed. This is a supplementary tool called Gatsby Plugin Perf Budgets. It's experimental, and it helps us identify which page to zoom in on, or pick a page to zoom in on. And now we're going to see the plugin output for a specific page. This is a lot of different JavaScript bundles compiled together, but we'll talk about how you figure out what this means. So what this basically breaks down into are application level JavaScript chunks, which are shared with all pages, and you can figure out which ones those are by looking at the naming patterns. And then there are template level chunks, which are shared with pages in this template. What that lets us do is identify, first off, lets us identify an order of operations, which are the files to audit first, or the chunks to audit first, because they're getting pulled in on every page of your site. And then after that, you can audit sort of critical paths and chunks that are getting pulled in on critical paths. What you should be looking for when you're auditing is look for large third-party imports, for example, Moment. Also, identify components or data that it seems like they shouldn't be there. You know, maybe they're only present on one page. Why is it getting pulled into every page? Then you can move from triaging and isolating to refactoring, right? Replace these heavyweight third-party libraries with lighter weight alternatives. Upgrade to Gatsby 3 for smaller bundles, and examine your import structure. So just look for shared components that might be pulling in other unneeded components. Great. Okay, we've triaged, isolated, refactored, evaluated JavaScript bundle size. We're going to move on to optimizing image and media delivery. So again, a Lighthouse report. The specific line items to look for here are defer off-screen images, serve images in next-gen formats, efficiently encode images. The great thing is this is really simple. And Lori's actually talked about this just a little while ago, which is use Gatsby plugin image. It is smaller and faster than the previous version of our image plugin, Gatsby image, and it is much faster than not using Gatsby image at all. Even better, using Gatsby plugin image will help optimize your largest contentful paint, which will affect all of your performance metrics in a positive way. Now that we've done that, we're moving on to optimizing, styling, and font files. So we're going to use a new tool called the Coverage Drawer, which is something you can find in Chrome Developer Tools. Command-Shift-P and type in coverage, and you're opening the Coverage Drawer. Now what the Coverage Drawer does is the Coverage Drawer will tell you the size of each file that is being pulled in when you load a page. And it will also tell you the percentage of code on that file that is being used versus unused. And you can see the unused in red. Look at the root page and look at that percentage. So when you see a percentage like 80% or 90%, what's often happening is that Gatsby will inline your CSS, and you've inlined a lot of CSS that's perhaps global, that's not being used for this particular page, which means that and you can click into the page to get more detail and sort of like just scroll through. And again, this is kind of a detective story. You're hunting for the things that are being brought in that you don't need. If you see a high proportion of unused CSS, consider refactoring to a more modular CSS solution. Also, font files. If you see font files above 30 kilobytes, usually you can slim down. Prefer the WAF2 and WAF formats to TTF. Trim down to one alphabet. And prefer self-hosting versus using Google Fonts, which will save you a request time over the network. So resource requests and CDN configuration. Well, we've actually already talked about a lot of things that reduce requests over the network, right? Fundamentally, reducing requests over the network means your data is faster because it gets there faster because it's co-located. But there's a couple extra things that you can know. So load critical assets from your main domain rather than your subdomain where possible. Pre-connect to subdomains using Gatsby plugin pre-connect and test that out. Sometimes you need to just test and make sure whether that's actually making your site faster. And lastly, utilize Gatsby link to optimize the intra-site navigation. So there's a lot of stuff here. We've covered a lot of material. Just to recap, performance matters because of user experience, because of conversions, because of search rankings. Like getting healthy, the hard part isn't just getting fast, it's staying fast. You stay fast by running a testing tool on every pull request and commit. You get fast by looking at the 5 types of browser work and then following the TIRE process: triage, isolate, refactor, and evaluate. And if you only have a couple hours and you want to make an impact, here's 2 things you can do. Sign up for Gatsby Cloud, so you get per pull request and per commit performance checks, and use the new Gatsby plugin image. Oh, one last thing. If you want to do this even better, we're happy to help. We recently launched the Concierge program, which is us engaging with your team to help improve the performance of your site. We've done performance audits on dozens of sites. We've chatted with hundreds of folks about performance. And many of the common patterns, including both these and other ones, are things that we've seen and we're happy to help share with you and help you implement in your site. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of GatsbyConf.